Okay, let's change the subject here a bit to the question of media consolidation. In a recent 3-decade period, starting in 1983, there was 50 corporations that dominated media ownership. And by 2004, the number had dropped to 5. And this is the title of a book by Ben Badikian, can't pronounce his name very well. And the book title is The New Media Monopoly. In the US, these are the 5 big ones: Time Warner, Walt Disney, Murdoch, Viacom, Bertelsmann. Rupert Murdoch was once quoted as saying, "I don't look for the news, I tell you what the news is." And as I mentioned earlier, there's a parallel path that has gone with Canada, and it just so happens in Canada there's 5 big ones as well: CanWest, Bell Canada, Quebecor, Torstar Corporation, and Rogers. If we refer back now to when I first started with Swinton in 1880, he's talking about rich men behind the scenes. And then we went on and mentioned Edward Bernay's Invisible Government. And then we mentioned Strauss's Nobility. We're reminded then that an aristocracy, unlike old times, still runs and controls government, media, and corporations, comprising what outgoing President Dwight D. Eisenhower coined as the military-industrial complex, or colloquially known as the MIC. Now, this is on par with the alleged enemy of World War II, Benito Mussolini, which his government was labeled fascistic, but Mussolini said the marriage of these is better called corporatism, which we now see is involved with U.S. corporatism or U.S. globalism. They are interchangeable terms. To encapsulate just the little brief history we've had here, Thomas Jefferson spoke of informed consent as the cornerstone of democracy, whereas we could say misinformed consent as manufactured consent befits aristocracy. In other words, informed consent is to democracy what engineered consent is to aristocracy. So this brief look then at the history of media in conjunction with public relations reveals how a sense of entitlement has led the elite to rationalize with noble lies their control of the 99%. So let's put the last word on this back to freedom of the press, First Amendment, and Justice Black, who said the responsibility of a free press is to prevent the government from deceiving the people. However, in reality, the press is parroting the government corporations and protecting their interests instead of performing their responsibility to critique, challenge, and expose. Okay, let's go on now to a little different section now. Let's look at some of the tools and mechanisms of manipulation that they use to have us go along with their train of thought. Secrecy, codes of silence. We've talked a bit about public relations companies. Propaganda masquerading as news. Propaganda, glorification of war. Any of you heard about Operation Hollywood? It's a book. But you see, the Pentagon, when they do things, everything starts with Operation this, Operation that. So Operation Hollywood, they have their own writers. They have their own studios. They make their own movies. There's several out right now. There's something Dark 30 or something, which is telling us that the only way we can get good intelligence is to torture people. I might remind you that of the first 650 people that were arrested after 9/11, they were terrorists. They were collecting them like flies. and it turned out that only 2 people were convicted of terrorist events. And then both of them were overturned because in an appellate court they found out that the confessions that they had gotten from these 2 people had been obtained under torture. So there you are for that. So the idea is that torture then doesn't get you anywhere, but glorifying it in a movie, that's not very good. And there has been a new poll put out that more and more people are going along with the idea of torture. Okay, pretexts to hide true motive. Black or white, us versus them. You're either with us or you're against us. Fear-mongering, inducing paranoia with constant repetition. Smear campaigns ad hominems, that's the same as a character assassination. Demonization of dissenters, protesters. Lying, partial truth. Always tell the truth. Never tell the whole truth. This was actually an ad man's motto developed in the 1920s that catches how you get people to do what you want them to do. Always tell the truth, because that baits them, and then you switch on them by not telling the whole truth. Pronoun obfuscation, like we Americans won't stand for that. Media kangaroo courts, fake news, video news releases, which we've talked about. Television-filled trivia shows, distraction. And now there's been a recent one too as well, Big Boys Go Bananas, and it's about how Dole Banana Company took a little producer of Big Boys Go Bananas to court for exposing their crimes and pollution of little countries. Okay, so what's available to counter techniques of manipulation? Let's turn to, let's try and reclaim our brains a bit here. So this is the, the activity in the emotional center of the limbic system of the brain is in the center area of the brain here, as you won't be able to tell it exactly. I don't think the lighting is great enough for that. And the power of the limbic system is to supersede and circumvent the neocortex, the prefrontal cortex. On the left side, it's that green area. This is the area where our center of reason is. And what the PR experts do is they try to keep us in the limbic system area by maintaining a political atmosphere of fear and intimidation. And if we recall for a second, Bernays was saying that the practice of propaganda had proven that experts can, quote, control and regiment the masses without their knowing about it. Well, this is how they do it. They constantly appeal to the lower brain centers and try to hold us there so we don't go into the higher center of the brain. But the good news is, of course, is that we can defeat and reverse the effects of propaganda, and the key to it is conscious awareness. Through awareness, we can override the emotional centers and push ourselves up into the neocortex, where we conduct rational thought. And we can do this deliberately by focusing our attention on tools of critical analysis. So here's some things to be thinking about. Freedom of the press or control of the press. Am I fully informed, or do I have limited access to critical information? Is the news I receive truly independent, complete, and unbiased? What would a populist controlled media look like? Media by the people. Some of the things we should know, too, is we should be alert for euphemisms. Like the Department of Defense originally was the Department of War, and it's just changed to be more palatable, but it hasn't changed its function. The U.S. is still waging wars around the world. Another one is to be wary of what is missing in the news. There's millions of events that take place around the world every day. So why are there just a few specific stories that are on television? You notice how today you can flip the channels and it's exactly the same story. It's just a different face giving it to you. Consider the source, recognize bias. Who pays for the news? Which media mogul is controlling the message? Maintain an awareness of context of history. And just keep reminded that today's elite, like the kings of old, dominate the messaging and the news. And remain aware that the elite must maintain the illusion of a free press. Otherwise, because they don't want to awaken and anger the masses. So ask yourself again then, is the news I receive truly independent, complete, and unbiased? Now we should know also what good journalism should look like. We've been looking at the dark side. And there is a group called the Project for Excellence in Journalism. They have 9 core principles of journalism. I'm not going to read them out. I'm going to just leave them on the screen, put out by the Pew Research Center. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're comparing bad news with the good news.